I think this may be the 27th season that I have sought words for this journey. And I can tell you that in those 27 years, I have never read the passage that I will read this morning. It is a passage that is found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke in variations, and it is known as the little apocalypse. The word apocalypse is derived from the Greek word apocalypsis. Although it's very often used to describe a great devastation or cataclysm, the literal meaning of apocalypse is an unveiling or a revealing. Hence the word of the final book within the canon, Revelation. It's apocalyptic literature. So apocalyptic literature rises out of experiences of extreme suffering. And it suggests that salvation in the midst of this time of devastation has got to come from outside of the planet. It is an expression of a deep longing that there will be some massive intervention by a divine being. And you can understand, can't you, the circumstances that would create this kind of literature. When the world is a mess, it very often feels more hopeful to believe in what Dominique Crossan calls the anticipated great divine cleanup of the world, which some believe will be an act of incredible violence and vengeance where the bad guys are going to get theirs. That projection of a longing for salvation makes perfect sense on the one hand, and it makes no sense on the other. So, every year, it is traditional to read one of these little apocalypses from the gospel. It is a conversation that is mixed up with another conversation about the second coming of Jesus. Because the word Advent means coming. So this is why these crazy little apocalypses pop up at this time of year, though I've never touched them with a 10-foot pole until today. The disciples asked, "When will this be, and what will be the sign that all these things are about to be accomplished?" And Jesus said, "Many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. When you see the desolating sacrilege set up where it ought not to be, then those in Judea must flee to the mountains. Someone on the housetop must not go down or enter the house or take anything away. Someone in the field must not turn back and get their coat. And if anyone says to you at that time, 'Look, here he is, the Messiah,' or 'Look, oh, he's over there,' don't believe it. False messiahs and false prophets will appear and produce signs and omens to lead astray. But in those days, after that suffering, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see it, the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. Then he will send out his angels and gather the elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. But about the day or the hour, no one knows. Neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. So beware. Keep alert. For you do not know when that time will come. Written by a Presbyterian minister in the States who is an amazing storyteller. And he writes all kinds of stories about his first charge in rural North Dakota, I think. The name of the clerk of session in his church is Angus McDowell. You can just picture that, can't you? So he starts out this particular sermon by talking about a time when he'd lost his voice. And it was really big Sunday of the year. And there weren't too many pinch hitters out in his little rural community. So this is where I'll start sharing the story. There's only one thing to do, unfortunately, and that was to call on the only spare preacher in a radius of 50 miles who would climb into a pulpit on such short notice. The Reverend Mr. Lex Ardent, he is a retired clergyman who spent his working days as an evangelist on what was left of the old sawdust trail. The tent meeting preaching circuit, that is the ancestor of television ministry. His church is called the Apostolic Church of the Divine Christ in God, which broke off from a splinter group of a sect whose name includes all the same words somehow arranged in a different sequence. I knew Lex through the local clergy association. He moved here when he retired 6 years ago to live with his son, Reg. Lex's theology has been strongly influenced by the woollier and more wild-eyed of the Old Testament prophets and their thunderings against idolatry, corruption, and all sins of the flesh. From this point in the Bible, Lex's religious thinking did a graceless leap over the Gospels and landed squarely in the book of Revelation. It was well known in town that Lex only preaches one sermon. He had gotten away with this over his 45-year career in itinerant evangelism because he had been forever moving from one tent meeting to the next. If the sawdust trail happened to bring him back to the same town again, Lex believed that a person who had been saved by his sermon the first time through would not need to be present and the second time around. If someone did return, the sermon must not have worked the first time, and he could well stand to hear it again. Lex's lone sermon was about the rapture, that esoteric doctrine beloved by those of an apocalyptic spirit. This doctrine says that at the second coming of Christ, all true and faithful followers, liberally numbered at 144,000, will be plucked live and whole from whatever they happen to be at that unexpected moment and whisked into the kingdom. On the rear of his rusty Buick LeSabre, Lex had a bumper sticker that says, "In case of rapture, driver will disappear." That bumper sticker is the core of Lex's theology and pretty much the whole point of his sermon. In the sermon, Lex paints a dozen verbal pictures of people gathered together in various places from which one of them, always only one, would suddenly and without warning disappear. People are waiting in line at the supermarket and all of a sudden the checkout girl is gone. The rapture. Kids sitting in school and without a hint of what is to come, a seventh grader in the second row vanishes. The rapture. Folks are shopping at Sears. And suddenly the guy standing in the auto parts line is simply gone, leaving behind him the two brand new snow tires he'll no longer be needing. The rapture. Then in darker tones, sharpened over the years to a sinister edge, Lex would describe a church service. Worshippers gathered on a Sunday morning and only one of them raptured, actually hinting that the one may not have been the preacher. In his school of preaching, Lex is a master. He launches his sermon slowly and quietly and then climbs gradually into sermonic frenzy. It is, of course, designed to scare the bejabbers out of his listeners. most of whom, on brief self-evaluation, count themselves among those left behind, as Lex likes to call them. Figuring out the mystery of the season that we practice as Advent can be a bit like figuring out the mystery of who's on first. The season of Advent is meant to mirror the preparation for birth. But the word Advent also speaks to a future coming. It's a bit schizophrenic. I thought he already came, but he's going to come again. So we tend to either reduce it to that, or we reduce the mystery to a nativity scene and some really glorious carols, and they are glorious. But underneath this movement, this mystery that we enter every year at this time is, I think, a greater truth that Richard Rohr adequately exposes in his book, Christ, Cosmology, and Consciousness, a reframing of how we see. He writes, "You and I are living in an ever-expanding universe. You and I are a part of this Christ mystery. Without any choice on our part, if we are prepared to enter this story, that is where we find ourselves in the story. It's nothing we have to consciously believe. It's like being wrapped in a whole new set of clothes. So that if we consciously take this mystery as our worldview, the lens through which we see our lives and everything else unfold, then we can make some interesting conclusions." End of quote. This is where I'm going to cut right to the chase. First, if we claim that image that is made explicit by the Apostle Paul, when he affirms that the whole universe is the body of Christ. It's huge, isn't it? It's massive to make that leap. I know the church has this history of saying, we're the body of Christ. But if you read Paul a little bit more carefully, it's just so much more cosmic than that. And so, if you're going to say, yes, that is a story I can affirm within our story, the entire universe is somehow mystic body of Christ, somehow all enveloped in Creator Spirit, then we can make one more conclusion. And that is this: that we then become the second coming. If we are the body of Christ, then we are also the second coming. Because I ask you, if not us, then who? We have been walking into this truth the entire Advent season, with the four shady ladies who carried the ancient story in their violated bodies, with the three barren couples who agreed to believe the impossible could happen through them, with Joseph, who agreed to put down his ego and his cultural framework, to accept a child that was not him, and thus make the story possible. It is strange but true that the groundbreakers, the miracle makers, the game changers in our tradition have all been people. Have you noticed? Nothing coming from the clouds. All flesh and blood. They've all been people who have said yes to their true identity. People who have said yes to their divinity. And that, I think, is what is at the heart of this season, an invitation to be the second coming. An invitation to be